some insights into how do you guys do it? When did you guys start thinking that this is important to do, right? And functionally, how your company is set up to actually produce good content repeatedly and strengthen your brand over time through that?
So first of all, one disclaimer that I don't feel we have the best engine in place when it comes to marketing and branding, and there's a lot more to be done, and that's what I keep on so pushing our head of marketing as well, which is Vivek Nair. He joined us from the companies like Danfoss and Tata and all of those places, right? So there's a lot to be done, but one thing which in general, what we did was first of all, as so he joined us I think a year ago, and I think then a lot of things took off in the right direction. Well, there were a lot of ideas from our side, from the founder side, but obviously you need a good execution team to be able to kind of take it forward. But one thing is very important: whatever channels anybody is live on, we need to be sure of what kind of audience we're trying to target over there, right? Putting very fancy content on LinkedIn doesn't make sense, but putting content which is deep, in-depth analysis and which kind of targets the so to say uh, intrigues the psyche of engineers and potential hires and people like that, that works on LinkedIn, right? But putting the same content on Insta doesn't work, right? Insta is more touch and feel, like so more so to say high level in that sense, and it's more about aesthetics and so to say bringing that out. So that kind of content works on Insta in that sense. So we have to be very sure about what is the channel. If you're talking about social media in that sense, what kind of public events are you being engaged in? What we found was that going and sponsoring events has led to less impact for us as a brand than organizing our own events, right? So when we are kind of going and sponsoring any event which is related to our field, whether for EV or for sustainability in that sense, is it has not led to very big impact. But for example, our day zero, which is our annual so to say celebration of technology and also announcements in terms of what we're going to do next year and what we have done in the previous year beside this last year in that sense. So it's every 21st of April. I'll request all of you to kind of join in the next April in that sense. But if you look at it, last year we're doing it for the first time, and we have more than 10,000 people watching live, right? So opening it up, being in public and saying that, okay, this is what I am claiming to do, this is what is feasible, this is what I will achieve, and then giving an update in terms of, okay, this is what I committed for, and this is what has happened, and this is what is going to happen next. I think that maintaining that consistency of communication keeps your followership loyal in terms of following your brand and everything, and that's what we continue to do. Another thing is that in terms of branding, one thing which has been primary is for us at Log9 is to have a sustainability first branding approach, right? So all of our communication you would see is more to take a very measured approach around sustainability and talk about anything from that perspective rather than just pushing products into people's faces. Right? It's not just about EV or battery and stuff like that. It's always connected to the cause, and being connected to the cause kind of helps you go a long way.
I do have a question for the first part of your like the conversation we just started. You did mention about how like on LinkedIn maybe having a more in-depth analysis of what you're doing and intriguing the interest of engineers would be very helpful, which I agree. But at the same time, like people like me who I am an environmental tech engineer, but I don't know so much about EVs and nanotechnology itself. So for me to have an overall view of what you do, and that when it piques my interest going into your account later or the company's account to look more into the engineering would work. So how do we balance both of that?
So
What is
when
the
I
target
say
audience?
have it, yeah. So when I'm saying that you need to have a very so to say in-depth approach to explaining something, having an analysis and putting a content out there, it doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't. It has to be sophisticated and not complicated. There's a very thin line between the two. So it needs to go in depth. It needs to kind of open out a problem or a challenge or a solution in a very holistic manner, but it doesn't need to have a lot of technical jargons over there. It doesn't need to be having 10 mathematical equations written over there. That's not required at all. If you are not able to convey the most difficult thing out there in the world, in even to a 5-year-old kid, then you're not building out the right content, right? So for example, even I think it was Einstein itself. He said that if I am not able to explain my theory of relativity to a 10-year-old kid, they've anyway failed in kind of being absolutely sure about my theory.
I actually fully agree with that one. So one of the beliefs we have in SusMafia is to make sustainability a default choice. We have to make it, one, obviously required, second, easily accessible, third, economically viable, and fourth, fun to do. And
Absolutely. Hey, it was good to see you, man.
You too. Very good to have you here. And I think that's where a lot of great solutions don't actually reach the right audience. They fail to communicate in a relatable way. And at least I have this quip now that if we don't make sustainability sexy, nobody's going to care. Right?
Absolutely. You cannot make it boring and dumb. Yeah, like while we might be doing serious stuff, but it doesn't need to be boring and lame. You need to we need to really get out of our nerdiness and put our best foot forward when communicating the impact or the way it is being solved for.
Yeah, not only does it need to be the overall better solution for you and for the planet, but it needs to actually feel good, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Tesla way back in 2010, 2009, 2010, they didn't actually start by selling a sustainable, car good for the planet. The car itself was actually really, really sexy, and it found the right audience. It just happened to also be more sustainable for the planet, and like the core utility of a solution solving someone's problem, and then on top of that actually feeling really good. I think that's how all of our climate solutions, the people sitting around the room today, that's how our solutions get adopted by the mass market, right? Whether it's enterprises or consumers. So this core element of making it feel good, communicating it in a, like you said, like you're talking to a 5-year-old, right? And making people actually feel like they can relate with it. That is something so core to the climate tech, environment that we're in right now. And not a lot of people are doing it too well. So Log9 clearly has kind of nailed that piece of the puzzle, which is communicating in a very effective manner.
I'll give you a very simple example on this, right? So when we started to kind of work with our vehicle manufacturing partners, like people who are making the 3-wheelers that use our batteries, right? So we were discussing with them what kind of colors and all of those things should go on a 3-wheeler. And we asked the customers, so like customers in the sense, the people, the drivers who basically drive these vehicles for deliveries and stuff like that. They were like, we want colors. We don't want very mundane light blue and white and all of cream color vehicles, like and we also want colors in what we drive. And then we came out with the most crayonish colors in that sense, and now it only doesn't make drivers feel happier, but also creates a presence for you on the road, because if you look at the most bizarre colors out there in that sense, sometimes I feel like it's becoming too much also, because we have like very shiny blue or yellow or red and all of those kind of colors going out there in the vehicles, but they stand out. Anybody can say that's a different 3-wheeler. It's not the usual petrol or diesel based 3-wheeler, but it's a different 3-wheeler that's going out in the market on the road, and you can very distinctly see it from a kilometer away.
Yeah, so there is a element of status associated with it too, right? That the person adopting a truly good solution, not just a solution for the sake of it because it's a climate tech solution, but if it's a better solution overall, they are adopting it to, at the end of the day, look good too, right?
Absolutely.
And that bridges really well with the earlier topic you were talking about, greenwashing. So somewhere, like we are adopting sustainable solutions because we care for the planet, but at the same time, a lot of people are doing it to look good. So it can spill over into greenwashing. And where is that fine line, right? I'll give you an example from like what we're doing also. And thank you for being an investor in Climbs. A lot of the companies we work with, they're actually channeling marketing budgets, right? Not sustainability budgets of any sort. It's marketing budgets, which are far larger in volume, into, paying for what we do with them. And that's okay. As long as you can still provide a great solution to them that is truly more sustainable, but they're paying from their marketing budget to look good. I think that combo is really interesting, right?
Sorry.
You're
Yeah,
muted.
no, absolutely, I agree. Whether it is sources, I don't think source is important, but the intent is more important, right? And initially, if you look at one thing that is that I see is that so I was just I happened to be in one of the roundtables at IIT Delhi last 2-3 days back, right? And this was about figuring out solutions for the entire smog problem in Delhi and all of it, right? So there were a lot of ESG heads of various large multinationals, which were also part of the discussion. One sad part that I saw was that this is the ESG heads are the absolute useless people that were there in the organization. They were picked up and they were made ESG heads of these organizations. They have absolutely no clue as to what is required for sustainability. What should we be thinking about? So and those are the kind of people. So that is one sad part. But what is happening, beginning to happen, and a good sign in that sense is that a lot of companies are now themselves saying that okay, we would like to contribute to ESG, but why can't we use our CSR budgets in going into ESG, right? While CSR budgets were always sort of sustainability focused, but that sustainability was more around maybe child welfare or social welfare and education and all of those things. But how do we kind of sort of say transition into providing that money for climate solutions and climate impact? So that's a positive sign. So whether it is coming from marketing budget or CSR budgets and stuff like that, I think source is irrelevant as long as the right people are driving it and the right intent is there.
Oh, yeah, it's a wonderful thought. Source doesn't matter as long as the capital is being actually put to use and intent is there, right? Because I've heard this problem come up too many times. People going after only one, sustainability budget or ESG budget, and then that's limited. How about like we go after HR
Correct.
budgets and marketing budgets and beyond, right? The world opens up in far more interesting ways for our solutions if we do that.
We did another thing. So you mentioned about HR budget, right? So for example, one of the components of our hiring budget, we said that how do we create a brand for ourselves in the various campuses out there in the country, right? So obviously to attract talent and to grow talent, this space doesn't inherently have a very large talent base available. So we said that why don't we use our hiring budget a little bit to kind of offer certain solutions, certain projects around climate tech, particularly around batteries and EV, because that's where we work, right, into various campuses. So now we just launched a hackathon, which we called as Energy-thon. It was an internal, so to say, festival that we used to do at Log9. Now we are for the first time, we are opening it up to various campuses across the country, and then what we're doing is going ahead and funding BTech projects of various students, right? So we'll call for applications, and then 10 projects across the country will be funded by Log9, and then those people can kind of take support, not just monetary support from Log9, but also technical support and do their BTech projects. And later these people will get a chance to kind of be a part of Log9 in that sense. So you're absolutely right. Money can come from anywhere as long as you're innovative enough on that side.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of money out there. You just need to create the right incentives to let it start flowing, right? And there's always incentives that can be created to unlock that capital. I want to ask you another question about, if you look at the different stakeholders in society, it's individuals like us, it's the government, it's enterprises, you can call it consumer brands or enterprises, or financial institutions, right? Between these four, who are you betting on to drive us to the more sustainable future? By 2030, the vision you have, which of these four is it really going to largely be driven by? Is it individuals like us stepping up and saying we want solutions? Is it going to be the government driving it forward? Enterprises are going to be driving it forward?
Two stakeholders are most important in this revolution, right? Which is the government and the individuals, right? So the government needs to basically bring in the right kind of frameworks, have the right kind of policies in place, because without that, it will not be possible, right? Otherwise, people from the financial people who know the financial game, right, will always play the financial game to not kind of bother about this. They want the simplest stuff and the cheapest stuff, and where the most money can accrue to them, not even to the government, not to the individuals, not to the enterprises. How can more money flow into the financial pockets is what the agenda is, right? So, so from that perspective, the onus is on individuals and the government. I'll again take the example from my sector itself, which is the EV, right? If you look at EV revolutions happening country-wise across the globe, it is only seeing traction in markets where the fuel prices are above $1 per liter. Any country which has less than $1 per liter kind of cost of fuel, there is hardly any EV adoption happening in that country, because you will not be able to create parity for an EV if the fuel prices are just too low. And why would somebody go through the hassle of charging and whatnot when they can just buy cheap fuel? So government policies become very, very important. But at the same time, unless and until individuals are aware of it, they will not make the transition, right? Uh, what comes into this picture is like, if you, and we don't appreciate this, like top 1% of the population, like in terms of wealth and in terms of access to resources, right? Top 1% of the world population is responsible for more than 75% of the carbon emission that happens in the world, right? So, and so in involving that top 1% into this entire, so to say, ecosystem is very important. And at the same time, it's not difficult, because that 1% is always accessible in terms of whatever information you're putting out there. And it's not about going out to the less than 90% and kind of preaching them that you change your means. It's the top 1% which has to change our means. What kind of resources, how much we are using, what are we using, and how we are using it. So those things become very, very important, and hence individual as well as government have to come forward, and then only enterprises will start to offer those kind of solutions, those kind of products out there, and then the right kind of financing will fall into the picture.
Great. Akshay, I'm going to follow up with another question. We have a bunch of founders over here, and among the things that you guys as a founding team in Log9 do well, can you tell us about a few of those things? What do you think you guys do really well that enables your success?
See, I think one of the most important thing, as I said, is having a climate first approach. You cannot be half-hearted and disinterested getting into climate tech. That is my first response to this. Whatever decision that you are making, it has to be based on whether it makes sense for the climate or it doesn't. Right? We have done various things for that purpose. We said that we have a rooftop space. Why can't we, while it's a leased property that we operate out of, right? Why can't we take all our auxiliary load off grid, right? Why can't we do that? So we tied up with a solar company. We said that why don't we put solar panels here? We'll put our battery here, take all of our lighting, HVAC load off grid, right? Then we said, okay, EVs for personal use that I mentioned is not making sense. But how can we increase utilization of EVs so that all our top management can use electric vehicles, but still cross that threshold? So we said that we have 10 people which need to be kind of driving these vehicles. So we'll share 6 or 7 vehicles between 10. So we'll increase the utilization, but still use EVs, and we'll be charging that EV from the solar rooftop that we have in the office, and hence your threshold will be lower and utilization will be higher. So whenever where we are taking any decision in terms of how we conduct ourselves in Log9 or what products we are building, it's always a climate first approach, and that is working well for us. And then nobody can question the intent also, right? It's also about, are you true to the cause? And if you're true to the cause, then you don't need to basically shy from anybody or be subservient to anybody. In that sense, you can stand up there and call out any bullshit out there in the market, and then that's what create a brand for yourself.
Hey Akshay, I had one question and also a sort of comment that I have seen while living in the US. So I was interviewing a year back with a startup that converts carbon dioxide into fuels, and at the end of the interview, I asked a question and saying that, they're using these earth abundant catalysts, which is copper-based catalysts, to convert carbon dioxide into fuels. And I'm like, are you guys not having issues with the catalyst poisoning and efficiency and whatnot? And the response was that, oh, we are using medically grade pure carbon dioxide. And I was like, that doesn't make sense at all. It seems like greenwashing. First of all, I think the direct air carbon capture is itself very inefficient and sort of looks like greenwashing. So what do you think, like our direct air carbon capture and conversion of that captured carbon into fuels is something that we can afford to do right now? Like, is it a feasible solution? Because I feel like it's
as far as feasibility of these solutions is concerned, at this point of time, it's very low, right? Obviously, the cost per kg of carbon capture is very prohibitively high. But at the same time, I would say it's an important technology which is required. See, only reducing emissions which are going to happen today and tomorrow is not gonna suffice the overall, so to say, positive impact that we need to save the world, right? And hence we need to have a way to solve for what has already happened, right? We already have emitted so much. How can we kind of bring that down becomes equally, and I think more so important, to be able to do that. So that's where DACC comes into the picture. It is very expensive right now. It is not feasible at scale at this point of time, but constantly innovating and developing that technology becomes important. At the same time, I would agree that a lot of aspects of DACC are being greenwashed right now. Like, for example, capturing CO2 and then putting it into, so to say, your previous oil mines and stuff like that. It's a recipe for disaster. Any kind of a leakage from there will lead to all the effort lost and a lot of energy wasted in DACC happening itself, right? So how we are storing it, or how we are, where once the CO2 is captured, how are we converting it to a fuel or any other kind of a solution, that needs to be very thought, like it has to be thought through in absolute detail. But a lot of work needs to be done, but it's a, so to say, I would say, fruitful effort which is going on if we are able to solve for it, because there is very few solutions which can take care of whatever we have already emitted.
So this can help in that, because I don't know, I had done a calculation long back and I found
not
that
right now. I don't think
not right now. Yeah.
I'm not saying not right now. It is absolutely an unfeasible technology at this point of time. But there is a lot of work which is happening, which makes me and a lot of people hopeful that at least by the turn of the decade, we will have viable solutions for DACC to happen at scale.
Yeah, I think Mr. Vasudev also had a question to ask. So can you unmute and talk? I mean, reconnect maybe, perhaps. We can't hear you, but I can see you mute and unmute. While he figures it out, anybody else who has a question here?
Yeah, I got a question. Akshay, it's a personal thing. I'm trying to look at, we're about to raise funds. So it's the next round of investment. We've done a Series A before. I want to know, as founding team and people who have raised money before, what are the things that you look for in your investors beyond obviously the money, right? How do you select this type of investor? Because there's so much money available, the people are there. Like, I think it's our job to choose wisely and get the right kind of alignment. So what are the things that you guys have kept in mind, and how have you chosen the kind of investors you want to work with?
See, when we were raising, so to say, capital for climate solutions in Log9, I don't think we had that choice ever. And I don't think we have that choice even today, right? It's also about what stage you are raising at, how much you are raising, right? So today, raising a million, 2 million, 3 million is relatively easier as compared to when we were at that stage and we were raising that kind of capital in the market. So we didn't frankly have a choice. So I can't say how to go about choosing. But for people who are raising smaller rounds, and as we have gone through that cycle, what I can say is that please, given that there's a choice available, choose choice, choose in it. That's where they don't take it from sources which are shady and all of that, but that's the usual scenario. But my if the choice is available, take it from people who have gone through that process, right? So, for example, we have so last year we all of the founders at Log9, me, Karthik, and Pankaj, we committed all our personal savings to climate tech, right? And all our investments now only go into climate startups in that sense. And we have done 5, 6 of them. Climbs being one of the places where we have put a small angel check, right? And what we did was, as we were doing these investments, a lot of other previous investors of Log9 and a lot of people in the Log9 network, they said that we also want to kind of come together and basically pool more capital for this cause. So we have just floated a fund called Climate Niners, and we are looking at anything up to pre-series A level, up to $150 kind of check sizes. So it's a small fund, and the idea is to invest in climate tech startups. But anybody who comes to us, we are very, very cautious about greenwashing. So people have to bear with doing that analysis and coming back and saying that yes, it has an impact.
Back to Vasudev sir's question, I think he's pinged us saying that he wanted to know if aluminum fuel cells were sustainable, or is there matrices that, like the ones you mentioned at the beginning, that you can use to see if they are sustainable?
Yeah, so this aluminum fuel cell itself, which is a technology which we have been pioneering, and I think we're one of the two, three companies globally who are pioneering this technology in the world. And again, it's a classic example of our climate approach. So while we were building this technology, we had a lot of things going in our way with respect to aluminum fuel cell. We ran an internal analysis and realized that aluminum fuel cell, any fuel cell for that matter, whether it's hydrogen fuel cell or it's our aluminum fuel cell, any fuel cell based technology is relevant only for long haul mobility, or where you have a high, so to say, longer duration energy requirement, whether it is as a replacement for diesel or sorry, I think my network dropped. Can you hear me now? Hello.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah, so I was saying that this aluminum fuel cell technology is a classic, again, the strategy around it is a classic example of our climate first approach in that sense. Because as while we were pioneering this technology in the world, uh, we analyzed and realized that uh, fuel cells in general, whether it is the aluminum fuel cell or whether it's the hydrogen, I'm getting a lot of echo from somewhere. Hello. Sorry.
Yeah, now it should be better.
Yeah. So I was saying that if you analyze the entire solutions around fuel cells in general, right, you'll figure that fuel cells make sense only where you have a long-term energy requirement. So whether it is a long-haul truck, bus kind of an application, a shipping line, or even people are trying to now do it for airplanes and stuff like that, or you are talking about long-term power backup, like a replacement for diesel generator and stuff like that. That's where fuel cells make sense. And the reason for that is when you are using a fuel cell based system as compared to a battery, the end-to-end efficiency, energy efficiency of a fuel cell will be sub 35%, whereas batteries will give you 85% plus energy efficiency. So if you have the feasibility of using a battery in a certain application, then it is a far more energy efficient approach and hence a more sustainable approach. But in various applications which cannot be electrified based on batteries, for example, long haul trucks, it's very difficult to electrify with batteries. Shipping lines are very difficult to electrify with batteries. That's where fuel cells will come into the picture, and that's a call we took that okay, it needs to go into long haul kind of applications. So that's where we will put it forward and not try to kind of force fit it for any kind of shorter haul applications. To the other question, where are we on the aluminum fuel cell journey? So we are gearing up for pilots in the coming year. First pilots will happen as a replacement for diesel generators. So the systems are already ready. They are being tested at Log9. And in the next financial year, we'll start to deploy it for field trials. And then we're waiting for electric vehicle traction to happen in the long haul truck bus segment and the shipping segment to start offering solutions in that side.
Great. Good luck with that journey. I think we are almost at the end of the SusTalk. So is there any last questions that anybody wants to ask? I think we have time for just one more question.
Not ask a question. I'll put it like this to all of you. It's not for Akshay alone. I was talking to Suresh Prabhu some 10 days ago. He said, like Arjun said, 20% and 5% of 20%. The impact we are making in the urban milieu is very, very little. If you take water, for example, there are three areas, coal, oil, and water that are extractive, as you all know. Now, in water, we're finding that 80% of the daily demand for water is cultivation water. If any of you is working in areas that can smarten approaches to cultivation water, I'd like you to get in touch with me. I'd like to see how we can, we have access, I have access to about 30 to 40 crores of monies that can come in, subject, of course, to all those things that you all know about. Now, I'm saying that water is one area, of course, I'd say knowing the domain that we're working in, he didn't touch upon that. It's finally to do with these three extractive resources. And if you can come back on, if any of you have any thoughts to share on what we can do on water, I'll be happy to learn from you all and see how we can further that. Well, of course, the things that he spoke about, especially from oil, Akshay's context is oil, I certainly appreciate.
No, I agree with that thought, and just to kind of share a few more pointers on what he was mentioning, right? If you look at overall challenge around climate change and sustainability, right? Particularly climate change and carbon emissions. See, 2/3 of all carbon emissions or more are attributable to energy generation, transmission, and consumption. Whether it is for any kind of further end use application, whether it is to purify water, whether it is to run your vehicles, whether it is to run your homes and industries, or whether for any other kind, whether it is to basically process food. So all types of energy requirement lead to more than 2/3 of emissions in the world. And that's where, at least at Log9, we said that we will kind of impact that large piece about. At the same time, without solving for water, without solving for soil, without solving for food, we cannot be solved for. At the same time, I would say, to the point of urban centers versus others, when we talk about changing our means, adopting solutions which are more, so to say, climate positive or carbon positive solutions, it is the responsibility of the urban centers to be able to do that. What we don't realize that the per capita carbon emission of an average urban dweller versus an average rural dweller is as high as 40 to 50x. So that is a significant delta in terms of who's contributing the most to climate change. And because urban dwellers are doing that, majority, like the majority of that is coming from the urban dwellers, it is our responsibility to adopt these solutions, to push forward for these solutions.
You may want to do a reassessment on 2/3 of energy, coming from these segments, because if you look at the one area that we all are not doing anything about is cultivation water, and that is 60% as carbon emissions go. That continues to be. We could recheck those figures, and I'm happy to learn from you all and stand corrected.
Sorry, what are you saying? 60% emissions?
Cultivation water. So I'm saying that
I would
agriculture.
I can share reports with you, but energy is anyway required in all sorts of cultivation. I'm talking about energy required for anything, right? So the point is, classification of emissions can be done in various ways. whether it is done in terms of application, whether it's done in terms of a sector of industry, whether it's done in terms of energy requirement and demand and utilization. So there are various classifications which are possible. I'm talking about energy versus other sources of emissions. For example, if you're talking about natural emissions from any kind of industrial activity or anything like that, or those natural emissions from agriculture, from animal husbandry or anything like that, versus energy directly or emissions directly or indirectly attributable to energy, any kind of energy demand, whether that energy is being used for pumping water, whether that energy is being used for cleaning water, whether energy is being used to rear animals or process food or anything like that. So when you classify in that sense, that more than 2/3 of emissions are attributable to energy, and then rest of it is related to any kind of direct emissions, whether it is coming in from the animals which are being used for food requirement, or the various other things which lead to direct carbon emissions in that sense. So that was the classification that I was talking about.
Sure. I'll be happy to engage with you on this discourse. When we say cultivation water, we mean fertilizers, we mean pesticides, and therefore energy. And water itself, and its nexus to energy, is clear to all of you here. So I'll leave it there, and I'm very happy to learn from you. We will see how we can extend this. Like one of you said, these conversations can't stop here. It has to have things that can, forge new directions on the lines that you set out today. With you.
Absolutely. Look forward to that. Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody, for asking such nice question, and thank you for shaping the conversation quite well. And Akshay, it was great having you here. Do you have any last thoughts to leave across?
No, thank you very much. Thanks for having me over, and it was great to interact with the SusMafia, so to say, clan, if I can call that. But it was a pleasure interacting with all of you, and look forward to more conversations over here. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to have you in our community as well. So I will reach out to you right after this call on that regard.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thanks, Shamila.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you so
Akshay.
much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.